Hello. Hi, I'm Kinsey Cronin, Director of Business Development at StartEngine. Thank you all for joining us for our Opio live stream today. Really excited to walk you guys through the entire process. We've got some people here in the room with us today who are also learning and are going to be asking questions. So if you have questions, please write them down in the comments. We're going to get to all of the online questions at the end of the presentation. Alrighty, so raising your next round with StartEngine. All right, let's go through this. So what is StartEngine? As mentioned, we are an accelerator previously. Now we're a platform dedicated to helping entrepreneurs achieve their dreams by helping them help themselves raise capital. Here is, this is important, it's a brief history of the Jobs Act, or what we do, the Opio industry. So in 2012, the Jobs Act was signed by President Obama, and that took several years of legislation before it came into effect. But there are three major titles within the Jobs Act that StartEngine takes advantage of. There's Title II, which allows for non-accredited investors to Title II is also known as Reg D 506C, and it allows accredited investors to be solicited to. So you can reach out to accredited investors with an opportunity, which was previously illegal. It also has Title III, which allows a company to raise up to $1 million. Now that's been raised because of inflation to $1.07 million. And that allows anybody to invest, including non-accredited investors. And then Title IV, which allows companies to raise up to $50 million. And we're going to get more into detail on how, what all of the ins and outs of those specific titles within the Jobs Act work. But this was first written in 2012. And then by 2016, we had our very first large OPO, which was Elio Motors. They raised almost 17 million. Actually, it was 16.9 million from over 6,000 investors. So that was really exciting because that kind of proved the concept. And they launched their Test the Waters campaign the very same day that the law came into effect. So it was really great to have an early company that did really well. By May of 2016, that's when the Title III came into effect. So Title II came into effect first, then Title IV, then Title III. And when that came into effect, that allowed companies to raise up to $1 million. Since then, this industry has been growing 20% per month, and over $1 billion has been raised through these regulations, which is really cool. Here are some of the companies as of November 16th that were live on our platform. You can see Rayton Solar is a B2B solar panel maker. They've raised over $6 million now. Ourselves, StartEngine, we're actually running our own campaign. We've raised $1.3 million, over $1.3 million to date. That's really exciting. It's just something to take note of. Most of that money is going towards advertising for StartEngine. So campaigns that come as we are spending this money are going to have the benefit of a huge amount of advertising that's coming from StartEngine out to the community. So just drawing a lot more eyeballs to the site on its own, which means that if your campaign is listed there, you've got more people potentially coming to view your page. And then MedX is another great company that is a pesticide that is specifically designed for cannabis. It is not a cannabis company. Unfortunately, we cannot fund companies that touch the plant, but we can work with companies that are in the cannabis industry as long as they don't touch the plant because of banking laws. Some of our
do something about that too. I think I was hearing on the news that we're going to implement some ways of getting the banks to be able to do that.
Right. So we have a comment here about potentially having banking laws change, and we are looking as soon as the banking laws allow for us to use these funds or raise funds this way for cannabis companies. We will be excited to do so. It's something that we're kind of constantly checking back in on, and currently we have a great program for cannabis-related companies. Here are some of our other recently launched companies. Zoid, did Zoid relaunch? That's strange. So we've got Zoid, which was a company that raised capital with us successfully over the summer, and I guess they relaunched. And they are a wearable technology that will wake you up if you're having a heart attack. So it can help. It's a medical use for your smartwatch or other technology that you have. Sarah's Greens is a great organic produce company, and then Sandra's electric car company is an electric car, three-wheeled electric car. So you can kind of see from what we're sharing here that there's a lot of different industries that get covered and a lot of different types of companies that can raise money successfully with StartEngine. This is the experience for an investor. So if an investor comes to StartEngine, to our platform first, then they're gonna click the Discover Companies button, and they're going to be able to see all of the tombstones for the available offerings. They will find something that interests them, click on it, watch the video, read up on the story, read the terms of the deal. If they're interested in investing, all they have to do is click Invest Now. We also send them an investor guide that we ask them to read, and then they put in their payment information, and it looks like this. You put your funds in, your name, how much you're trying to invest, and then you just click invest. If you use an ACH transfer, it happens right away. If you use a wire transfer, you'll get an email with wire instructions to go to your bank. So it's a really streamlined process. As far as the involvement from the offering companies, you guys don't need to be involved in this process at all. You actually can't communicate with investors directly until they've already invested and you've dispersed their funds. So StartEngine takes over this entire process of reviewing the investors, making sure that they're eligible to invest, and processing their investment. So just to get a feel for what the momentum has been, we have over 100,000 users. Our average, on average, over 30% of investors for any given campaign will come from our community. The average investment is about $1,500, and more than 15% of our investors are repeat investors. So they go and take a look at every campaign, leave comments, and are actively looking for places to put their money. We've had over $43 million raised for over 75 companies. On the large Opio side, that's Title IV, the average is about 4.75 million. On the small one, it's about 389,000. And there's a 68% overall success rate for our companies. We launched 21 companies in October. In November, we have launched over 27 companies. So it's really growing very fast.
Launched funded?
That they got started. So different companies take different amounts of time. They have different lengths of time. We're talking about how many new companies are coming to the platform. That number is growing all the time. And more investors are coming to the platform with each new company. So this whole industry is growing very fast. So it may feel new now, but very soon it'll be something that's common. StartEngine Secondary is our trading platform that we launched. So if your shares are tradable, which we'll get into when they become tradable, your investors can actually go trade and buy and sell right on StartEngine Secondary, which is really cool. Giving them that opportunity to have some liquidity can make your offering more attractive. So we've been using that phrase OPO, online public offering, and it's similar to an IPO, but you don't have to do all the same amount of work, and it doesn't have that same yearly cost as an IPO. So looking at the small one, this is the low-cost option that we recommend most companies start with, even if they intend to go into a large OPO later. It allows you to raise up to 1.07 million. It's available for anybody to invest. The general public can invest. I shouldn't say anybody, because if they're on a government watch list or if there's some other reason that they are not eligible to invest, they won't be able to. But the average person, law-abiding citizen with some level of income is going to be able to invest.
US only or
International is okay. So when it comes to, so the question here was US only or international. When it comes to international investors, there are a few countries that we don't take investments from. One of them is Canada. Yeah, because of the Canadian laws. So the law allows investments from pretty much anybody that the US has any reasonable trading with, but those individual countries may have their own laws to prevent their investors from investing in your company. So we don't take any investments from Canada, and there are some restrictions in the British Commonwealth as well. But if somebody is investing from Israel, that's fine. If they're investing from Saudi Arabia, that's fine. So if you have people that you expect to invest from around the world, they will be able to do so, as long as it doesn't violate the laws of their country. There's no SEC qualification needed. With the large Opio, we will see that there is a qualification by the SEC required. It means the SEC has to review all of your documents and qualify you prior to your launch. In the case of a small OPO, the day you file is the day that you launch. The Form C is what you're filing, and it includes basic legal disclosures. It doesn't require a CPA review unless it's over $107,000. So for most of our companies, they do get the CPA review and set their maximum higher than $107,000. But we think this is a really great option for companies that are starting really bootstrapping and starting small, because they can get their first $107,000 without having the cost of that CPA review, and then they can use some of those funds to pay for the CPA review and raise more money.
CPA mean audited documents?
The question is, does CPA review mean audited documents? And no, it's just a financial review, which is not an audit. It's lesser than an audit. So the one thing about the small OPO that's limiting is that you cannot tell anybody that you're investing or that you're taking investments until your raise is actually live. So if you can tell people who are integral to the process, or if you have people within your organization that you need the approval of or you need their help, obviously any kind of support that you need for the raise, you can talk about it, but you can't go out soliciting investment from anyone until you have filed with the SEC. And then the shares do typically become tradable after 1 year. So there's going to be a 1 year lock where all the investors have to keep their investments, and the transfers are very limited. But after a year, they would be able to sell them, which is pretty cool. The costs, this is important, the upfront costs. So under $107,000, it is possible to do this without having any upfront costs. Now, that is for a company that is very computer savvy, is able to go through the entire process online on their own, and already has their formation documents in order. So if you don't have your formation documents, you are going to need to pay to get those done. So keep that in mind, but I wouldn't consider a formation document to be a cost of this raise. It's a cost of having a business. For raises of $107,000 to $1 million, you're going to need the financial review, and you're going to need a legal sign-off from an attorney. Those things are both important, to have the signature of a certified accountant and the signature of a licensed attorney, because you're paying for them to have reviewed it and to have a vote of confidence in what you're doing, and that's going to be important for you, and we require that. The after the raise fees are 6% of the total raise for domestic investors. That goes to StartEngine. An additional 2% on any international investors that come through, because we have to run passports and the process is more complicated. And then an additional 4% for any credit card investments. So if someone's investing via credit card, there is that additional 4% that goes straight to the credit card company. This is the first time that people have ever been able to invest in credit cards or invest in any companies via credit card. So there's a level of risk there that the credit card processing company is charging us a lot for. There's also the additional potential cost of StartEngine Premium, which is $5,000, and that is a set of services that comes from StartEngine, in which we actually will build your campaign page for you and will do walk you through. You'll have a consultant here that helps you get everything done. I highly recommend it for companies that if you really want to get it done right, and if $5,000 is something that you can afford, I recommend it because it's going to save you a lot of time. And it's going to help make sure that your campaign is the best that it can be. You're going to have a lot of eyes from StartEngine on your campaign as you're building it, which means that all of our best practices are going to end up being applied to your campaign, and your headaches are going to be significantly reduced because you'll have someone to call here and ask where things are, what you need to do. It'll be very clear. You don't have to project manage the whole thing on your own. Although I do always recommend having somebody at your team being designated as the person who's responsible for this campaign, who is going to be making the most important decisions, and who's going to be the person that you're going to call upon to make sure the numbers are there once the campaign is running. So small, select to large. There's a strategy in which you could raise all of your funds, your 1.07 million, from your small OPO, max out. And then you could potentially, if you feel like there's more money there and you don't want to have to give back some of this money that's coming in over your maximum, what you can do is run a select OPO, which, if you remember, is only open to accredited investors. You can pull those accredited investors out of the small OPO and take their funds into this Reg D offering, so that you can actually raise in that first round more than 1.07 million when you combine 1.07 million from just non-accredited plus whatever you're getting from the accredited investors. A little more about that select OPO. You can raise an unlimited amount from accredited investors. There's no cap. The rule about not soliciting investors until their raise is live is still there. You do not need to fulfill the same financial requirements. By law, you don't have to. The investors might look for it. And ultimately, if you've already shared all of those items on the Reg CF page or the small OPO, you might as well share them with all of the investors.
Can't solicit investors? Do you mean can't solicit other angel investors? Or
oh, so the question here is, can we not solicit any investors? Even if they're not going to come through StartEngine? Is there exclusivity? No. If you're doing a private raise outside of what's going on StartEngine, that's considered unrelated to this raise. So you can still solicit investors, you just can't solicit them for this particular raise. You can't say, hey, I'm going to be launching this in 2 weeks. When I do, can you put the money in that way? You would not be able to do that. What you can do is do a totally private offering. That's separate. That's a good question. So, no SEC qualifications required either. So the select OPO is really easy compared to the others to just get up and running. The shares become tradable after a year as well. So let's say you've done your small OPO, you've raised 1.07, you actually went over and you decided to also do a select OPO just for accredited investors. So you pulled out the accredited investors. Let's say between the two of those, you've raised $2 million. But you know there's more money out there because there's such a great response, and you want to be able to allow more non-accredited investors to invest. Then you would move over to do your large OPO. So this will allow you to raise up to $50 million per year. It does require an SEC qualification, which includes extensive legal disclosures and a 2-year independent CPA audit. So that's going to be more expensive. You're looking at $50,000 to $100,000 to get started. It's also going to take more time, 3 to 5 months to get your qualification and get launched. The cool thing about this one is you can tell people that you're going to be doing it prior to actually launching. So you can start collecting what we call in the test the waters. You can collect pledges of interest, pledges to invest later. They're not binding, but they do involve you getting the contact information for the investors and all of the...
Are they signing the term sheet?
They're not signing the term sheet. They are not, they actually don't even see the term sheet. They don't know. What they're saying is, hey, I have $2,000 that I'm interested in investing in your company. And that way when you launch, you can go back to them. So if they maybe happen to come upon your small OPO after it closed and they're interested, and now they've learned a lot about this company, they don't have the invest button because there's no more room for them to invest. You can have a reserve button instead. They click the reserve shares button, fill out all their information, including all of their banking information. And then when you launch your large OPO, with one click, they can complete their investment. So the shares become tradable immediately after the offering closes as well. So this is really cool too. So if anybody out there is thinking about doing potentially a coin offering, which are becoming really popular now, one of the strategies there is to do a pre-sale at one price and then go into regular sale. So that builds in really well with these regulations, because you can have one price with your small OPO, and then you can have a higher price per share with the added value for the large OPO. So you can encourage people to buy low, and they'll have to wait for a year, but if they buy higher, they'll be able to trade immediately. So it creates a really interesting market for your company. Some stories on StartEngine. So this is the part where we walk you through what other companies have done, what they've been thinking, what their campaigns have looked like. So Saunders Electric Car is a really cool company. It was a small OPO, now they're in a large OPO as well. But their idea was, we're just talking about the small OPO here. They said, we're gonna build the most attractive, affordable electric car ever. So it's gonna be inexpensive, it's gonna look great, and it's gonna be electric. They knew that they had a community of fans who believed in them, because they already had a booming business in electric bikes, and they had several very successful crowdfunding campaigns pre-selling the bikes. So they knew they had this amazing community who was just all about them. So they incorporated a new company, brand new company, set a pre-money valuation of $33 million. They were still just at the idea stage, offered a $120 minimum investment, ran a 75-day campaign, and raised $1 million from over 1,600 investors. So that's pretty incredible that you could incorporate a new company, put a $33 million valuation on it, and then raise $1 million. And what's really cool is now they're in their large OPO, and they've actually done exactly what they said they would do, which is one of the reasons their fans are so supportive of them, is that when they make a promise, they keep it. And in this case, you can actually check out now their current OPO. They have built the prototype, and so now they've included the prototype in their next raise as they're raising more money. Obviously, $1 million is not enough to fund a car company, but $1 million is enough to get them started, which they've done, and now they're out there to raise $50 million. It's really exciting.
How they solicited 1,600 investors that later on?
Oh, how do they solicit them? That's the question. So how do they solicit them? I'm going to go into that a little more, but I'm happy to explain it now too. They mostly focused on an email campaign, and they also did targeted Facebook ads.
I think they're allowed to solicit investors.
Oh, you can solicit once you launch. So on day 1 of 75, that's the day that they started their campaign, where they started emailing and they started doing ads.
Emailing the 117,000 in StartEngine?
No. So the question is, do they email the 117 or 113,000 at StartEngine? No, we did that. StartEngine emailed our community. Saunders emailed community members. He had a big list of customers from his previous crowdfunding campaigns, and from people who he'd been gathering emails for a long time throughout his business. So they did reach out to their own list of emails of customers, and then they also did a Facebook advertising. I think they did some contests too. So they did a lot of different things, but I would say primarily most of the funds came through email marketing. Golfboard, this one's really cool. This is a company that did small OPO and the overflow into a select OPO. This is a great company because of a few things. One, they had a nice low valuation of $8 million. And they had an amazing executive team, including the father-son duo that founded Bally Fitness. So there was this faith in the team behind it, and this low $8 million valuation. You can see that what it is it's a golf cart that you ride more like a surf or skateboard. And it solves a big problem for golf courses, which is that it's harder to get younger people on golf courses these days. So a lot of golf courses are closing down. If you look at the numbers, the younger generations are just not golfing as much as the older generations, and that's a business problem. So the customer here for Golfboard is the golf course. It's the golf club. So they were able to run a really great campaign at that pre-money valuation of $8 million, $125 minimum investment, the goal being that you want to get a lot of investors who go to wherever they golf and ask for golf boards to be something that the company purchases. It was a 60-day campaign with an average of investment of about $1,500. What really made this campaign successful, they were doing well. They had raised several $100,000 just through their marketing. They didn't have the same big community that Saunders had to be able to reach out to. But towards the end of their campaign, with about a week left, they had a single sales day they knew they were going to have because it's a big conference of the golf community. And they sold over $2 million just in that one day worth of their product. When they announced that, it ended up going viral among financial communities because here was this crazy company that was at 8 million valuation. They just had a sales day of 2 million. Their valuation is going to go up fast. Any Tom, Dick, or Harry can invest in this. You don't have to be an accredited investor. The minimum is only $125. So this is something people wanted to talk about. They wanted to tell each other about. And that's what happened for this company. They went way beyond their maximum really, really fast. They had a huge amount of investment come in after that announcement and after that press went out. There were articles in Equities about it. There was some articles, I think there's a NASDAQ article about it. So they got a lot of great press. And that required them to go so far over that they went into a select Opio and pulled out all the accredited investors. That was really exciting for them. And we got to have a party here with them and ride around on the golf boards, which was cool. So here are I just want to, you probably noticed these throughout this presentation so far, but really want to make this clear, the advantages and the disadvantages of raising capital from the crowd. So I'm going to start with the disadvantages. First of all, your financials will be public. So if you're not comfortable with having public financials that you'll be reporting once or twice a year, depending on the regulation that you are raising under, this isn't going to be right for you. You have to be comfortable with transparency. The people I find the biggest problem with this for are companies that have very high margin for luxury goods, or they don't have a high margin, but if they just are luxury goods companies, and if they're not in revenue, if they're not post revenue, they don't want their customer base to potentially know that. If their brand is high luxury. It also takes a lot of work. Successful raises take focus, strategy, and hard work is what it says, and that is true. So if you're not the person that's going to be able to focus and strategize and work hard, you need to make sure that there's going to be somebody on your team that's going to do that for you, that's going to focus on it. And the most successful raises always have somebody like that at their core, just making sure things are happening. And then all of those companies are going to have those reporting obligations as mentioned, yearly for small OPO, semi-annual for large OPO. So for the small OPO, that's about $5,000 a year to do, actually it's less than that because the financial review doesn't need to be certified by a CPA, so you just share your financials once a year. For the large OPO, you do need to have an audit.
With the investors or just?
The question here is who do you share the financials with? You have to have a place on you have to have a designated place where your investors can come and see it. Now you can encrypt it if you want to, but all of your investors have to be able to access it, which ultimately is going to make it public information.
Why?
Because it'll be really easy for your investors to share that information with other people.
Can it be a non-disclosure?
I don't believe you can do a non-disclosure with your investors on that. Really? Especially because the shares will become tradable. So it's really important for that information to be available to anybody.
But can I just go into StartEngine and just look up any company's financials?
Can I go into StartEngine and look up any company's financials? Right now, any currently live company, you'll see all their financials right there on the page. If you're going to look for a company that previously raised for us, you would need to go to their website. You'd need to go to the section of their website that shares their financials, which is probably some link at the very bottom of the homepage. And yes, technically you could. So if a company had raised from StartEngine or from any other, raised under these regulations in general, with the exception of if they did a small or large OPO, you would probably be able to find their financial report. The advantages, that's the more fun one to talk about, is that you get to set your own terms. You get to build brand ambassadors, so you're turning your customers into more loyal brand ambassadors. You're giving them a reason to tell people about your company. your efforts are doing more than one thing at once. So yes, you're out there pushing this campaign for investment to raise capital, but while you're doing that, you're also marketing your company. You're going to be introducing people to your company in general, and then you're also going to be increasing sales for the company. So pretty much all of our companies that are live and are selling some kind of a product see an uptick in sales during their campaign, because it's a huge push for letting people know about what you do and what you have, why your products are so great. And you can also continue raising consistently. So you can always have this. The first time you do this is going to be the hardest, but as you keep going, you've got the steps, you've got the whole thing in motion, you can keep raising. So you can raise $1 million every year. You can raise $51 million every year. You can raise even more than that if you're using a select Opio. So a little bit more about marketing. So I did mention here that Saunders used the email campaigns. That was one of their strongest. They actually also did a 12-day countdown at the end of the campaign, which we really recommend doing countdowns as you're getting close to the closing date of your campaign. So they just sent an email at the beginning and said, we're going to email you every single day for 12 days. Here's the first one. And that really worked for them. Campaign updates are important. Every time you update your campaign page, there is a new section added to the bottom with the update that lets everybody know what the latest news is, and it turns that update into an email that goes to everybody who has already invested or has clicked invest and hasn't completed their investment or has chosen to follow and track your campaign progress. So it's a great way of sending a direct email to everybody who has shown the most interest in your company. Paid media is also really great. That's a huge way to be able to target and test. So if you are paying for media on, let's say, Facebook, you can set up a bunch of different ads with a bunch of different target audiences and put a little bit of money into each one, see which one does the best, and then continue putting more money into that one, but also always be testing so that you get a really great return on your investment for your paid media. Contests. You'll see this was one of our earlier campaigns, was a jetpack. It's an actual jetpack. That man is really flying on jet fuel. He can fly around for about 10 minutes and then come back and land in the same spot. It's really cool. And one of his perks, or one of his ways that he collected email addresses prior to launching the raise without talking about the raise, was by running a contest. And the winner of the contest got to be the first person to fly with him as a passenger as soon as he got through the legal requirements to have a passenger, which he is still, I don't believe, still has gotten there yet. But that was really cool because he used a company called Gleam, which you may have seen these. They are viral campaign engines where you offer one prize, but a person gets multiple entries for sharing or for providing email addresses. So you get maybe one entry for signing up with your email address. Now I've got your email address, but you get an additional 5 entries for every time you put somebody else's email address in. And then you get an additional 10 entries every time you tweet or post on Facebook about it. And what's cool about that is I still only have to give away one prize, but you are helping me by giving me your friends' email addresses and by sharing to social media so that they can click on it and reach out to me as well. So it's a really good way to do it. It's called Gleam. Perks, Gleam. The perks programs, not every company does them, but they are recommended. That's when you offer some sort of investor gift at different levels of investment. So maybe your minimum investment is $250, and for that you just get your investment. But if you invest $500, you get your $500 investment, plus you get a t-shirt. Maybe at $20,000, you get an invitation to a launch party. Maybe at $30,000, you get flown out to have lunch with the CEO. Companies come up with all different creative perks that work well for them, come at a low cost to them, but would encourage investors to go up a little higher than where they would have been. So I was gonna invest $250, but now in order to get that t-shirt, I guess I might as well do the $500. I mean, I'm doing it anyway. So that's really something that every company should think about as well. Press I mentioned Golf Board. We talked a little bit about how they got such great press. That's huge. Any way that you can turn what you're doing into a story that somebody might want to write about and get into a publication that's going to get a lot of readers, that's going to be one of the best ways to get investors, because they're going to have this third party telling them how interesting and exciting your opportunity is. And finally, influencer marketing. We talked about Rayton Solar at the very beginning. Solar company, it's a B2B company that's raised over $6 million now, and their product is really complicated. I've had plenty of conversations with that CEO, but it wasn't until I saw the video with Bill Nye explaining everything to me that I really understood what they did. So it's a complicated process. It involves lasers and cutting off pieces of silicon, and that makes it cheaper. It's complex, but when I see Bill Nye explaining it to me, it makes more sense to me. And then what was really smart about the way they did this is they shot with Bill Nye once. Bill Nye tweeted about them, I think, a couple of times, but then he was no longer going to be, he wasn't going to be their long-term spokesperson. They've been live for almost a year, so that would be really expensive to pay somebody like Bill Nye to do that. But they were able to use all the footage and cut it up and turn it into ads. So they've got various different ads and a lot of different screenshots because they shot Bill Nye against a green screen. So they were able to take that content and reuse it in a million ways. So I definitely recommend, if you're going to work with any kind of an influencer, that you get something tangible at the very beginning, some kind of a shoot that you can repackage and reuse as much as you want, rather than relying on them to reach out to their communities on your behalf. So how do you get started? If you're thinking, wow, okay, this is something I want to do, there's so much opportunity here for my business, I can raise money from investors, let's do it, let's get started. You can go to StartEngine.com, create an account, and then click Raise Capital at the top. Once you click Raise Capital, it'll take you into our Campaign Creator Guide, and you'll just fill everything out from there. How long does it take to fill out? Well, for some companies, I've gotten it done in a weekend. Other companies have taken months or even years to get launched. It just depends on how quickly you work and whether or not you're kind of shape as far as its own paperwork and bookkeeping that you're going to easily be able to fill this out. So the way that it looks is up here. You've got 8 tabs. This is a screenshot from inside of the Campaign Creator. 6 story, team, press, timeline, terms, legal, and financial. So the first 5 are all have to do with the creative aspects of building your campaign page. If you go with StartEngine Premium, we actually fill most of this out for you. We take information for you, obviously, about your team, we collect your bios, but we plug all that stuff in. These last 3, the terms, legal, and financial, these are more of the paperwork, the formation documents, the balance sheets. And if you go with Premium, you'll have a consultant who will walk you through all of this. But otherwise, if you want to come in here and do it yourself, it's pretty easy to use. We have videos that explain how to do things. We have example content. We have links to templates. We have links to guides. So there's a lot of tools here, but it is a lot of work. All 8 of those tabs, they each have a lot to be done. So that's where Premium can really help, because you'll have a lot of that work taken off of your shoulders, and having experts do it is always a good idea. A little bit more about Premium. On average, these companies raise over $300,000 more than those who do it on their own. There's that streamlined onboarding process where the account manager is going to be there helping you take care of every step that's required. There's creative services. We're going to be building all of your campaign stuff. You'll get a marketing consultant where you're going to get some guidance. And then, of course, there is a full service workshop that we offer where you can meet with lawyers and accountants to get some of the work done. So in some cases, somebody might rather go with a StartEngine Premium with a $107,000 cap, because it's actually going to be less expensive for them to get the guidance that they need and have everything all done together with the $5,000 than it would be for them to have to go and get the legal and accounting work a la carte separately. Here are some of the companies that have gone Premium with us that have done really well. I've got an athletic wear company, Hilite. Elliptigo is a really cool. It looks, if you've seen this, it moves like an elliptical, but it rides you around like a bike. Green Sense Farm, vertical farming, Saunders, bike. They did a bike before they did a car. Okay, so now we're going to go into Q&A. Looks like we don't have any questions online, and I've been kind of answering your questions as we go. Do you have any additional questions for me?
Just trying to think now. Well, interesting. I like it. This is really cool. We'll definitely try it out.
Cool.
Yeah. The financials is one thing that kind of in my brain, because we've got competitors, we're live, of course, we've got hundreds of customers using us already, so I'm worried about how do I deal with that, like how other companies deal with. Because the last thing I wanted my customers to know my financials. I was thinking about raising money from my customers, but because they really like our product and they're using us, but at the same time, I'm thinking, I don't want to see our financials.
Right. You've got some concerns about those financials.
Yeah, the financials and our competitor, I'm worried that Google us and.
Well, I would definitely recommend, if you're concerned about the financial, sharing the financials, is that you would want to look at some of the current companies and see how in-depth that goes. Because as far as competitors go, you're not required to share anything that's proprietary, obviously, any part of your special sauce.
No.
But yeah, if your bottom line is going to be something that they're going to be able to see. So that is something that I would definitely recommend looking at the currently live companies, seeing what they're sharing. And then keep in mind, again, that the report for the small Opio is something that you would actually put together yourself, and it doesn't require the certification of the CPA. So that is something that is going to be about as light as it gets.
Okay, so for the small Opio, that's the $107,000, correct?
$107,000 maximum. You don't need. Yeah, so for the initial raise, if you're raising over $107,000, you need a certified public accountant to review your financials. Right. On a yearly basis, though.
Certified? In terms of documentation, or?
Just a financial review. It's a standard document, a financial review. But after that, after you've done that the first time to raise it, the yearly requirement does not require from the accountant. it requires certified financial review from you, from the person who runs the company.
Would you recommend starting off small, starting off under the 107 and then graduating?
You know, it depends on how quickly you think you're going to grow and how much money you need. So for a company that would love to have $60,000 and maybe is never going to go over $500,000, I would recommend starting with $107,000 because they're going to be excited and be able to use the funds that they get, but they're not necessarily, and it's possible that they may not choose to go over $107,000. So that's one scenario in which I would use the 107 max. The other one is if the company really does need to go over, but they just aren't in a position yet to pay for it, if they're really, really bootstrapped, then it works for the 107. But ultimately, it's going to save you a little bit of time and money if you're ultimately going to go for the 1.07 million, if you start with that, if you start with the review and you just go straight for it, I think you're better off.
We had a question about reporting for a small Opio,
okay.
Whether it's reportable annually and then beginning when was the question.
Okay, so that is, thank you for the question, David. It is annual and it begins a year from the date of your launch. So a lot of questions about that.
Yeah, we had a couple questions about just what is premium.
Okay, cool. All right, well, thank you so much for everybody. Oh, was there no? Thank you so much for everybody who joined online. We're going to end the live stream now. If you would like to email me any additional questions, the email is Kinsey, that's Kinsey, @startengine.com. I'll be happy to help you further.